Yeah.
All right, Tony, take it away.
Well, perfect. Well, Brian, thanks again for having us here today. And on behalf of Snap Install, we're excited to sponsor this amazing panel of industry experts that you are going to hear from today in a few moments. Our panelists are going to be covering the subject, customer engagement solutions in a post-COVID environment. I'm really excited to hear about what they have to say today. And we'll go through a few reminders as we start to roll through this webinar that we're going to be hearing today. With that being said, my name's Tony Green. I'm the VP of Business Development here at Snap Install. We are in our 10th year of business, and we're based out of the Minneapolis area, providing in-field installation services nationwide throughout the US and Canada. We provide services to a wide variety of customers, technology, and markets, including some of you listening today, and of course, our panel of experts. If any of you have questions, please be sure to let us know. We do want to make this as interactive as possible, so we do truly want to hear from you all listening in today. Be sure to put your questions within the Q&A section below, and also be sure to answer the poll questions as they're prompted. Once everything is wrapped up and more questions should arise, feel free to email any of us at any time, including those of you listening on YouTube Live. In conclusion, I'll let the panel take it from here. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show from all of us here at Snap Install. And a special thanks to our wonderful host, Brian Mazzaros from OpenEye Global.
Cool. Thanks, Tony. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Just to quickly kind of go around and just introduce everyone that you'll be hearing from today. As Tony said, I'm Brian Mazzaros. I am CEO of OpenEye Global. We're an experience design agency. And then I'll just sort of just go around and have everyone introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Ross.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ross Haxton, Brand Director at Glimmer, which is a global network of brand specialists managing the entire brand lifecycle from strategy to implementation. I'm based in London, and I've worked with brands over the last 20 plus years on a wide variety of brand experience projects, both in the UK and internationally.
Perfect. And Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. Michelle Montezeri with Legrand. Hopefully you're all familiar with Legrand. We're a global specialist in electrical and infrastructure solutions. I'm specifically on the AV side, and hopefully you know and love many of the brands under our AV division. And I'm a national solutions manager for our digital signage team. We focus on bringing all the brands together to create digital signage solutions and partnering closely with manufacturing partners in the signage space. And I'm based in San Diego.
Yeah, colorful and very warm San Diego.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay. We don't hate you for that. And Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Vanpelt. I'm the platform manager for Wallboard. And so with that, Wallboard is a cloud-based CMS platform that works within a number of amplitudes and verticals that focuses in on really expanding out the roles of digital signage through the use of live data, sensor technology, as well as interactivity. Now, for my role, I work with the pre-sales and post-sales process at Wallboard and really just try to help expand out our customers' knowledge of the platform and also really work with our customers on trying to get exactly the experience that they're wanting to get in their digital signage deployment, as well as rollout for our partners. I've worked within digital signage for, since about 2015 and been doing it and really just been enjoying every aspect of it, whether it's from the technical standpoint or up into the deployments and being able to see what we've done and how that's interacted with at the customer level.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. All right, so throughout the course of this, we have 2 poll questions, which I see a lot of you guys are already responding to already. And so we'll check back on these throughout the course of the dialogue. So I hope you kind of got the sense, this panel that we have together is, I love it because it touches on all these different aspects of customer engagement, from brand to AV to platform and into experience. And so, as we go through these questions, I think you'll see a really good perspective. And what's nice too is that this is a nice international mix here too. I think we have all parts of the US covered. Tony bringing up obviously the central part, but we have Michelle out west and Alex down in Texas, and then obviously Ross over in the UK. So hopefully you'll get a nice sort of well-rounded perspective on where we see things at. So, really to start this conversation off, I think the first question is very poignant for where we are today, which is really, how have behaviors changed, and what should our expectations be as we start to go into a post-COVID environment? Ross, I'll kind of start with you on your thoughts. Coming from a brand engagement perspective, I mean, what are you seeing, and what are these expectations that consumers and customers and visitors should have as they go into these different kind of environments?
Well, it's a good open question to start with, Brian. I think the last year, certainly for us in the UK, has been just one of endless lockdown, and that's given us all a huge amount of time to think about our own lives and our relationship with the brands that we connect with. And in terms of shopping and being a consumer, obviously we all know how much people have been shopping online and shopping using their phones. And when we begin to hopefully come out of this this dreadful period that we've all been enduring, our expectations, I think, will just be so much higher from the brands that we've been connecting with. In terms of the way we search for products, using our phones in particular, that has dramatically changed. There have been lots of solutions being developed to make searching for products far easier, whether that's visual searches or whether that's simply just improvements in mobile technology from many of the retailers. They've clearly been having to think about the relationship between local needs-based shopping and shopping that is a bit more sort of aspirational, shopping for almost entertainment or things that would be interesting to us. And obviously that has a consequence for the store side of things as well, the physical side. And many brands have clearly been looking at when things open up again, what changes are those customers going to expect from their destination stores and the formats that they've been developing in moving forward. Obviously, things like delivery and logistics is a huge part of that. So I think store formats are going to change to make that a great deal easier in the future.
Then Michelle, we'll get obviously deeper into technology, but from your perspective, and you guys work across a lot of different environments. It's not just retail. You're into healthcare and public spaces and so on. But I mean, what are you seeing as these expectations, or what are you even hearing from the groups that you're working with?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with Ross that there's an expectation that the experience consumers have in their home will seamlessly move to outdoor environments as well, or retail environments. And I think that brings in a few opportunities. One of them being, the importance of data analytics. I think brands that will excel in the future will take advantage of gathering data analytics and doing more pointed marketing to individuals. I think everybody kind of wants a personal experience in retail environments. And then there's this whole concept that retail spaces are no longer within their four walls. They're branching outside. And so marketing to folks well before they even enter your space is becoming more important. And I think folks feel quite comfortable in outdoor spaces, more so than they probably did in the past. We're seeing that in universities, in K-12 environments, in corporate environments, where they're really integrating with their outdoor spaces. And I think that lends itself to this whole green concept as well. Consumers are really pushing for, we'll say, climate conscious businesses. And this whole concept of lead and well really integrating into businesses, I think, is also an expectation that a lot of folks have today.
Interesting points. Alex, as you guys are sitting on the CMS platform side, obviously you touch so many different verticals as well. And so I'm sure you're seeing an influx of new opportunities, like we were talking to before, environments that you never even thought of. But does that kind of go to customers asking for wanting these sort of new experiences or features, or thinking of how do we bring these experiences to life? What are some of those expectations you're seeing, or how does that translate into what you're delivering or being asked of?
Well, I think one of the major things that's kind of coming out of this is in terms of how that experience changes. So if we're looking at a retail environment where we're so used to touching and feeling these products out, or at least learning more information by literally physically picking up these units and reading the backsides of them, well, there might be this change that's coming around that, hey, maybe we should just kind of hold off on grabbing things whenever we don't necessarily need to. And how can we still deliver that information to the customer in those retail specifics and without the need for that type of engagement, that physical alteration there. And so with that, these experiences that have kind of come to us is really focused in on that industry, that focus, that little bit of spotlight into engaging with customers without the physical environment. So how can we do that? But through the use of potential sensors, IR buttons that allow us to still mimic the feel of button technology without having to physically put my finger on that button to trigger it. So whenever we're doing these type of environments and these experiences and allowing that to come through, we're just having to really think about, okay, where are we replacing technology that we're so used to with now different technology, yet the experience remains the same? Because if it's one thing that the mass population is going to focus on, especially in this post-COVID world, is how can we get back to normal, right? And so with that, how can we keep things normal to the sense that the experience is still the same, it's just done differently, so that we're not kind of breaking the chain and causing further rift into the consumer and then also the corporation. So I think that if we were to create these experiences in those realms through the use of these sensors, or at least other platforms as to deliver these messages, then we can definitely still keep to that sense of what is normal.
Michelle, I'd like to kind of go back to something you said, which is it's kind of a nice transition to the next topic, which is, you talked about the four walls and how, transactions and things we're doing are not necessarily taking place within the four walls. And obviously, different technologies that we're seeing are the cause of that. Whether that is mobile engagement or just different means of shopping online and picking up in store. But I think this kind of opens up to a lot of this other bigger question, which is, what are these technologies that you have seen that have gone from trending to, now are sustainable, or something that was trending that eventually has gone away, that's allowing, retail or other environments to sort of operate beyond the four walls, or to, provide a different level of experience for their end user?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are two, in my opinion, obviously, and from what we're kind of seeing in the marketplace, there are two categories, I guess, that, it'll be interesting to see what happens with. One is touch integration. Touch was certainly something we all saw explode prior to COVID. And now folks are really, really uncomfortable with a shared device. But we have these incredibly powerful computers in our hands that we carry constantly, and we use them all the time. So the integration of haptics and QR codes, anything that can really kind of seamlessly exchange information from a public display to a personal device, I think that is the future. Do I think touch integration is gone forever? No, I think that there is a place for touch. It'll be interesting to see how it's integrated in the future. The other piece that I find very interesting is I hope, at least in the US market, we're getting a little bit more comfortable with the idea that we are on camera all the time and that data is always being gathered. And I think, it would be beneficial for many of these, really strong brands to continue to push that data analytics does not necessarily mean personal information, that it's really just creating a one-on-one experience for you in an environment. And I think that if that message can keep being pushed out, I think consumers will get more comfortable with it, and data analytics, the options with data analytics can get much greater than they are today, because the technology is there, the use cases are there. It's really just a consumer comfort level that has really stopped a lot of brands from integrating that into their applications.
So what
I'd
you're
like
saying is
to
the QR code will never die.
The QR code will never die.
Ah.
Man, I was a naysayer for QR codes for years. I thought, oh, that's just crazy. And
all of
seems
us,
really-
all of us were. We all
Yeah,
want to attend that funeral.
yeah.
and I would
Seems
like to
very
actually
elementary, but it's here to stay, in my opinion.
And I would like to touch on Michelle's point regarding, our mobile devices and how we're kind of quickly, pivoted around how we're doing shopping at that point. Because, I mean, look at this massive drive to curbside pickup in these retail environments and how we're doing that, but with our mobile phone, going to the location, on the checking in with the application that the retailer has provided to us, and at that point they come out and drop it off like it's no big deal. I think there's this focus in really expanding out how certain consumers, even in the in this kind of post-COVID world, that are going to continue to utilize those methods and technologies. I mean, let's think about it in the grocery store environment as well. I'm utilizing my mobile app to potentially make an order that I can then schedule and have picked up instead of having to go to the grocery store, which might fit other people's needs a little bit better if we're not even thinking in the sense of COVID and pandemic and needing to touch things. I'm sure there was a massive amount of our population that would rather not go into the store if they're needing to get these couple items. And so I think that's going to be a huge data analytic that will really kind of we'll continue to see, I believe, in this kind of post-COVID world that we'll be traveling into.
Ross,
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd agree with everything that's been said there. And for me, the big kind of game changer over the last year is really how you use these. In the end, having worked with retailers for many years, they've often really struggled to understand how new technology can be integrated within the physical environment and how that relates to customers shopping online. And a lot of them, in the long conversations that I've had with them over the years, they've really kind of tried to understand, well, why is this new technology going to be relevant? Ultimately, how much is it going to cost? What's going to be the return from it? And how does that benefit my customers and the relationship that I have with them? So I think in the past, there's been quite a sort of skepticism to a lot of new technology. But I think over the last year, a lot of the things that we're seeing, because they're on our phones and they're very accessible, they become instantly much more kind of acceptable for the consumer. And from a brand perspective, the investment that goes into them is probably a bit less, and there's certainly less risk. I mean, some of the try before you buy experiences that the likes of, IKEA, Crate and Barrel, etc., have been developing, where there really is a kind of direct relationship between products that are being displayed, being able to search for them and see them within the physical environment, and being able to display products in a way that is actually responding to data relative to online sales, etc., is quite interesting. So that's where you begin to get full integration between the on and offline environments.
do you think, though, I think the one interesting thing to watch is that the rate of adoption has always been slow. It's been low, even, I mean, before COVID. Everything you're talking about, it's great. I love it to see it. You would see it appear in high profile environments. A flagship retailer would have it. And, I agree now all of a sudden, it seems like the mindset has changed to where these technologies, everything that you mentioned, curbside and AR and frictionless experiences need to get implemented quicker. Do you think these environments or these stakeholders are gonna, do you see that rate of adoption increasing? I guess basically is the question based upon what we just went through.
I see it in certain markets. I think, there is a variance between large cities and rural America, at least in the US market. And, in rural environments, there's probably a lot more comfort with traditional shopping as it stood pre-COVID. And I think, it's important to take the consumer into account. You know, if it's a brand that is focused on an older generation, probably need to step back on some of that technology integration early on. But then, you know, we look at brands like Apple, and they've succeeded at really adopting some of the older generation by making it really simple and offering opportunities to learn and, you know, expand the capabilities on the device. So I think it'll be a slower adoption in some areas, where in larger cities, you could probably expect that the consumers are comfortable with new technology.
But do you see the shift changing? And you know, Ross, I'd be kind of curious on your thoughts on this. I mean, do you see the shift changing because you have a lot of people that moved away from the large metropolitan cities and moved back home to sort of the second tier cities or a little bit out in the suburbs, and they brought those expectations with them. And so, you know, those brands or those stores or environments that are there, you know, do they feel the pressure of having to adopt and to, I don't want to say compete, or no, maybe it is compete to keep those people there. You know, I think there's this battle now between the suburbs and urban to where we want to keep people here. It helps with business. It helps to, you know, to bring in revenue. And is there that increase in, you know, bringing in that those technologies or that, you know, in those investments to, you know, enhance or, you know, create that experience?
Yeah, I personally think that the shift is absolutely happening. There's just no denying it. It's just, you know, the rate of development and the rate of investment that brands are able to provide. But in the end, if changes aren't made, the chances are you're likely to just drop off the list. You know, you're not going to be relevant anymore. And, you know, that's tough for many retail brands to have to accept, but it's just the simple reality of it. As you say, you know, people are moving away from cities. They're going to rural areas where they can have a better lifestyle. They can get a better home life work balance. And with that just comes change because those people, you know, raise expectations, but also because the accessibility of shopping using different brands is simply there, and it's there on our phones. The benchmark is set. So, you know, so many more people are, for example, using Amazon, of course, but because Amazon has made everything so easy, the expectation from every other retail brand is that they have to keep up or they'll simply die. So that relates to how store formats are developed, whether that's in big cities, whether that's, you know, in smaller locations. And, you know, the statistics for older people adopting technology are certainly, you know, positive. You know, they are beginning to learn how to use computers and phones. And if they don't, you know, they'll ask somebody who can. So it's certainly not the case that physical environments become obsolete. They'll just have to change.
The one question before we kind of move on, I know we're spending a lot of time on this topic, but I noticed that no one mentioned thermal scanners. And you know, here's the setup of the question, and this is open to everyone. You know, I'd read an article recently about, and I think Ross was actually over in UK, where a grocery store, you know, basically is kind of making the claim that they've received this medical grade type of cleanliness in their environment because they've invested in kind of the scan and go concept, which is like the Amazon scan and go concept. You know, you shop, you pick up, and, you know, your phone basically serves as the acknowledgement that you're in the store in a way that you go through, obviously through RFID and sensors. And so you have that kind of technology, which I think ensures a bit more safety in these environments because you're less interacting, you're not waiting in a check-in line, you're not necessarily touching a lot of things. And then you have the thermal scanner, which, you know, had that promise of we scan your temperature and you're okay to enter. Do you see this kind of difference to where maybe something that is sort of over-promised is you know, sort of weighing on a trend to where, you know, you have technologies that promise the safety, but then you actually have technologies like a scan and go, which if you dive deeper into it has more of a, I think, a sustainable story to it. I'm just kind of curious in your thoughts of these technologies that started in the beginning of saying that we can make environments safer, and that were cheaper, but then you have these other technologies that are a bit more complex, but actually do have an upside to them and are, poised for a longer longer investment.
Yeah, I think within the physical environment, safety and hygiene is just going to be, increasingly important. Even as people are vaccinated and they're able to go out and about a bit more. The memory will still be there of the way things have been. So it's important to make sure that environments are making sure that they're clean and all of those things. But in terms of the technology for scan and go or pick up and go, I really think those developments are going to just increase. Obviously, not with every retail brand, but I mean, even in the last few years, the likes of Decathlon, sports stores were having technology where you can dump your products into a bin. It would kind of calculate the cost of everything, and then you'd pay for it. So it's kind of a development of that, but it just becomes even more seamless. And I think going forward, if you can go into a store and not have to queue, not have to stand in line, that's just about convenience, isn't it? But also, if you don't have to be standing next to people who are, potentially, giving you a cold or giving you something else, that's good too. So, the two things kind of go hand in hand.
If I can add to the whole thermal scanning thing, at Legrand, we did quite a bit of research on that, in that realm, and actually launched a series of products focused solely on kind of the safe return. And, I hate to think that it was premature. I think there's a place for it. I do think that temperature scanning is something that employees will expect of their employers to go back to a safe work environment. I think from a consumer's perspective, front of house, that's a little invasive, even though it's just a temperature. There still becomes, the whole HIPAA thing, and how do you share this information without sharing it out to the public and embarrassing somebody if they get plucked, for instance. But I think the entire concept maybe was a little misguided. I think temperature sensors are not, they're just leading indicators, right? They're just providing a perception of safety for a consumer or an employee. And I think that will be around. I don't think it'll be at the scale that maybe we as a market kind of assumed from what we saw in Asia. We in Taiwan, they use them pretty regularly at locations, but I think here at least in the US market or North America, from an employee-employer basis, I think it's it provides some a perception of safety is the best way I can describe it. My employer cares about me.
But I think what you just said is a good distinction. I mean, you drew the line between back of house and front, and I think everything you kind of hit on was, there's that social anxiety of being picked out. But then at the back of the house, it does give the sense of, and I think it's a good point. I mean, it does give them the sense of the employer does care and wants to ensure that safety and put their employees in a safe environment. So I think it's a good distinction. I mean, this was another question that kind of came up, and it was sort of as we, as environments like retail and physical workplaces become less, are they going to become less relevant as some look more towards an online virtual model, work from home, e-commerce platforms. I'm kind of curious. I mean, I think Ross will kind of start with you, and I'm kind of curious in your thoughts. I mean, did these environments become less relevant, or is it just a matter of them, going through this adoption and reacting to new behaviors?
Personally, I think the physical environment is absolutely as relevant as it ever was. But again, as I said earlier, it's just going to change. I mean, retailers are having to completely rethink their models in many cases. in terms of their store formats, channels, and this is all about providing the best possible solution for customers. So this can be down to convenience shopping, so making sure that local stores are still there, but they're obviously likely to be smaller instead of the really big stores that people in the past were used to shopping in, because they can top up and they can complement their online shopping easier that way. They can also pick up products that they've ordered online. And then in terms of larger format stores where it's much more about providing an experience, that's going to be worked on and developed to differentiate and provide something that's going to wow customers. They can have more interaction with staff. They can try and test products. They can be exposed to promotions of new things. So I think those formats will simply be developed. There may be scenarios where third-party retail offers are brought into those larger spaces because they have the opportunity to do that, and those brands can combine and offer new things for customers. So I think there's a lot of potential for physical environments. In terms of workplace, I'm reading so many articles at the moment about people going back to work and whether or not they will. Personally, I think many people are absolutely dying to go back to a physical environment where they can interact with people, they can share experiences, they can learn, and they can actually get away from working from home. But I think also, we've all got used to working from home. There are many benefits to that in terms of not having to commute as long, getting a better work-life balance, as I mentioned earlier. And also sometimes just focusing more. You can actually get quite a lot of work done when you're at your desk at home. There's maybe a bit less distraction compared to the workplace environment. And therefore, I think the way in which workplaces are designed and where they're located will change, just to allow more flexibility. Maybe having work hubs near residential areas as opposed to going into the city centre. But certainly our politicians in the UK are speaking all the time about wanting to get people back into the office because the City of London is just going to die if they don't.
Alex, we were...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
I was just going to expand
please.
on his answer there, because I do, I agree with everything that Ross is mentioning there. But I think one thing that also that we should look into is, again, as I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, in this realm of not necessarily getting people back in the office, or having retail environments being a little bit more acceptable or more open to having these people come back into the mix, but more so looking into the whole entire the human emotion, right? The fact of, beforehand, we have this just open, get to work, you need to be in the office, but we've never really thought about the introverts, compared to the extroverts, right? In the the pre-pandemic world, it's office, it's, communicating in person. But I think one thing that this pandemic has, kind of shined a light on is how much work potential that you can get out of those introverts that like to be in their kind of home environments. And with that, the potential for them to really kind of strive, or be able to work a little bit more in tune with what they're more comfortable with, is going to be such a massive thing as well. And I think this kind of a post COVID world is going to have a little bit more focus on that realm as well. So instead of just the massive drive to get people back into the workspace, the physical environments, I think one thing that's going to look into this is the ability for certain people to be comfortable within their home environments compared to work environments, and certain workplaces allowing that, as well as in terms of the retail. I mean, I agree, like, retail, physical places, like physical stores, are never going to go away. That's just impossible. But also, I think that because of this pandemic, we've opened up so many revenue channels for users or, customers that are a lot more in tune with shopping from home, that now that, more retail environments have opened up those doors, we're going to be seeing still a steady amount of people, feeling more comfortable shopping from their home environment and receiving that product, whether that's shipped or potentially, through curbside pickup. So
one part I'm kind of curious, and with Michelle, I mean, when you look at workplace, from home, I think one part that's critical is obviously employee communication, and also the technology that employee has at home to continue to be productive. Do you see a shift in whether employers or employees are investing in or having conversations about, just to get the home office or the little nook in the kitchen set up for that? I mean, what are you seeing, or what conversations have you been part of?
Yeah, I think, from our perspective, our one of our brands, specifically Vadio, which is a video conferencing, PTZ cameras, et cetera, exploded. I think we saw camera sensors across the board explode as people tried to set up home offices, distance learning. I think about education. When I think about physical workplaces, I think about education, K-12 specifically, which is an enormous market for Legrand AV. And I think about some teachers out here that I know in California, and they're managing this back to school environment. And they've been told now, you will go back to the school and you'll have 50% of your class in person and 50% at home, which you'll be teaching over Zoom at the same time, or Google Classroom. And so now you're doing both at the same time. And I kind of see, that's a huge benefit for a lot of students that tend to thrive in a home environment versus a school environment. And I see, why doesn't that mirror itself in the workplace? We've got folks that thrive in an at-home environment and folks that prefer to be, in person. And I think that kind of blurred line where perhaps people who worked remote were seen as on the outskirts. I don't mean to say less than, but we're sometimes forgotten. I think that will become less and less as time goes on. And that will just become a blurred line where it doesn't matter where you work, you are part of the team. And I think about, the perfect person of the future, I think, is this remote employee that kind of lives close to the office and maybe pops in for meetings every so often. Maybe they spend one day, they say Wednesdays are my day in the office, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm working from home. I think that's going to be the norm, is this really kind of blurred line between work and home. Doesn't matter. I will have the same setup in my home office and I will be just as accessible as I am when I'm in the physical office. And I think that mirrors education, in my opinion. I think it's the same kind of, same concept for students, is let's create an environment that works well for everyone to thrive in.
So we just put up.
Sorry, Brian. Can I just
quickly
ask a question to Michelle based on what she just said regarding the workplace environment? Given that a lot of people are going to be working from home still, have you seen an uplift in technology that's being required within workplaces so that people as a group can easily communicate with people working from home?
Absolutely. I think, if we looked at the conference room pre-COVID, having a web portal of some sort, whether that be a Cisco system or, Zoom was being used in some environments, whatever that technology looked like was secondary, right? It was more about the physical space. And so I think it's more important today that we do have access to the web. So anyone that is in a virtual environment globally can feel like they're in the space. So that involves, having cameras around the room, in every room. I didn't bring it up, but obviously, folks really like gathering outside, and some studies have shown that people tend to thrive in outside environments. So outdoor spaces, which will drive people to want to come to the office. In addition, having access to the people that are virtual in an outdoor space, which is a really interesting kind of concept that a lot of Fortune 500 companies are trying to implement. So absolutely, I think it's more important that technology is taken into consideration in building design for a corporation.
And Brian, I apologize for expanding the
Oh,
question
no,
even
no, no.
further. Really, the answer that is, but I think a major focus of this too is that workplace communication, as kind of Michelle mentioned there. I can say in our aspect of Wallboard, specifically in our digital signage, we were tasked to figure out, well, how can I still communicate with my employees, or with just my corporation entirely, yet they're not in the office, they're not seeing the digital displays that we've installed throughout the hallways or in their particular areas. How can we go ahead and focus on that? And I think that was a major item for most digital signage platforms towards the beginning, is to figure out the solution as far as that corporate communication outside of the workplace, and how do we expand upon that, and how can that still lead into this this post-pandemic world on those communication tools. And so a lot of platforms have come out with web UIs, as well as broadcast applications for desktop environments that beforehand we've only seen so many actual software applications that do those type of things. Now that's just an additional arm on a lot of these CMS platforms, so that you can still communicate the way that you need to outside of that workplace. And I think that just is a way to potentially enable, the ability for what Michelle's kind of mentioned, as well as Ross, the fact that, we're going to see a lot of, workplace environments where I'm doing 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, yet I'm still being, introduced to the new information that I need to be introduced to from HR, from corporate, from heads of offices, etc.
A lot of pressure on the IT teams to figure that out.
Yeah, definitely.
So we just put up our second poll question, which I see a lot of them people are responding to. So moving on, I think obviously, I think this is a huge topic. Data has become, I think, at the forefront of every experience, and I think every environment that going into, just it's there, and I think we're starting to have a better understanding of how to actually use it to create experiences. So, I mean, Alex, from your side, and I know you touched upon this a little bit in the beginning, but from the platform side, I mean, how are you guys thinking about using data and tying that back into your platform, and showing these opportunities that exist to use that to to build an experience, or to make something more relevant to for your customers?
Yeah, I think those analytics that are going to be coming through are going to be kind of more focused on how we're designing that experience. And we've been getting that information since day one of this pandemic, through the use of our partners and our customers, and what they're what they're requesting from us on a technical standpoint of how can I do this, how can I do that. But if we're looking at that data analytics as as they come through, I think those are going to be huge items that corporations and retail environments are going to be able to drive past, or not drive past, but drive into, and really fully understand, okay, this has succeeded in this particular area, this hasn't succeeded. And I think it's going to be very environmentally based, and whenever I'm talking environmentally based, I'm talking about the difference between urban and rural, and those shopping experiences, because we could potentially put something in terms of an experience out in a more rural area that's not going to be as well received as it is in a urban area or a city environment. And so I think that's going to be a form of data that's going to be coming into play as well. Now, as far as this sensor type technologies, this isn't anything new.
Yep.
Digital signage has been working with physical sensors quite some time. And with that, I think what we're just going to potentially be able to see here is expanded growth on it. And really an expanded growth on how those sensors not interact in so much as a particularly data-driven way, but more so in an environment way. Because with us moving outside of this realm of not everybody's comfortable touching a screen, we need to still make it to where it's an interactable experience while still grabbing the information that we're needing to grab, so that we can understand the consumer's wants or the employees' wants and how that needs to be driven. So these sensors, I think we're going to probably see an expansion of combination of sensors, really creating unique experiences, but also in that same regard, really diving into specifics of that data analytic portion of, okay, who's interacting with this, and where are they interacting with it physically in on a map, where they are interacting with it, and then at that point, what is that information that they're wanting to perceive? Is it regarding a product? Because if it's regarding a product, how can we deliver more messaging in those particular areas without the need for that particular experience to be had before somebody goes up and interacts with the sensor?
Now, I want to kind of go from that point, because kind of switching to the other side. So Ross, you had made kind of a note, as we were talking in the past leading up to this, about reducing anxiety, and I think there's a behavioral impact that all these operators, whether it's retail or transportation and so on, have this opportunity to look at data to understand what's happening and be able to create a different experience or alter the experience to reduce those anxieties. Can you talk a little bit about the behavioral shift of using these technologies? So I don't think we talk about a lot about data, and it does seem invasive, but then there's the other side where there's a way to help reduce those anxieties.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of planning stores and zoning stores and looking at the customer journey, I think sensor technologies can really help better understand how customers are interacting with a store environment and interacting with each other. I mean, everything from looking at footfall, peaks and in when customers are visiting stores. And obviously there are extremes of this, with a supermarket, for example. If there are times of day where you're getting many more customers. I also think of sort of club stores like the big football clubs, for example, in the UK. During the week they're really quiet, but on game day in the future, when people are going back to them, they're incredibly busy for a sort of 2-hour period. So if you can begin to predict shopping patterns and when people are going to be in different locations, you can reduce some of that anxiety. And people can literally become anxious because they're having to wait in the queue for too long, and they get to the point where actually they've had enough of it and simply leave. But in terms of just actually being directed around a store, maybe in advance, being able to have an application where they can book in, an appointment slot. Adidas are doing this kind of thing at the moment, where you can kind of pre-book a slot to go and have a consultation about a particular product. These kind of things can really help, because you also feel like you're getting a much more personalized experience. And I think personalization generally in terms of brand communication and your relationship with a brand is increasingly important.
Michelle, I'm curious on your thoughts, kind of on staying on the same line of question, just about the behavioral impact of these experiences using data and sensors to alter the way people are feeling in an environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it mirrors what Alex and Ross both said. I think, signage in general was viewed as an experiential approach. So it was all about what experience can we bring from a signage standpoint. And I think, this pandemic has brought many negatives, but one of the things that it's really impacted in a positive way for signage is how can we impact operations. And that's the operations of a business, right? Like Ross was just talking about, how do we really reduce the operational impact on a consumer, and improve our operational guidelines, I guess, from a retail or business standpoint. But I even think about something like city planning and the sensors, the data that can be collected for city planning. And now we can take that information as a large metropolis city and say, here you go, retailer A, this is why we think this environment for your new space makes most sense. This is the traffic that we see in this retail space. And this is why your rent is going to be X dollars per month, because the traffic in this environment is higher than in others. I think about people really like outdoor spaces. I've talked about that a lot. And being in Southern California, people like to spend time outside, similar in Texas, in other environments that allow for it. And so how can city planners take this information and say, let's design our cities to be less anxious driven. Let's reduce kind of human traffic, because we can't reduce car traffic, unfortunately, in California. It is what it is. But can we get people, I think one of the expectations that have come out of the pandemic is consumers really want a quick in and out experience. They really want to get in, get what they want, and get out. Unfortunately, the days of aisle browsing have maybe gone by the wayside for now. Perhaps they'll return, but how can we make that happen through data analytics? And how do we show that to a retailer, without having implemented it yet? So that's one of the struggles, is how do we show the power and the impact of that data so that an environment can improve, and reduce anxiety and all the things that Ross and Alex talked about. So.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think, hopefully there's more of an attention to it, essentially, bringing these experiences in do, kind of reduces anxieties and, do help strengthen this kind of emotional connection, between the shopper or the visitor back into the environment. And we'll kind of end on this, as I know we're kind of coming up on the hour, but is there anything out there, that you have seen just from your own experiences being out there of some kind of experience that you've been through, where you're going to see and look at it and say, wow, that's actually been a very interesting approach, or something you've kind of, read about or seen as an example of some executions out there?
Well, if you don't mind me kind of chiming in here, and this is deeply in my nerd background of building computers and all that stuff. All right. Well, during this pandemic, my grandfather asked me to build him out a new computer, and at that point, there's these stores called Micro Center in the Dallas area as well as other states, and they actually had a great experience. And I think it was something that can easily be tailored into this post-pandemic world where, besides the fact that they were limiting the amount of people, the foot traffic inside of the store, so you had a registration and you had to check in, and you had a time slot to enter, they would actually have a person work with you throughout the experience. Now, that's one of those things, as kind of Michelle's mentioned, that we're not just kind of striving on the aisle shopper, but sometimes I think in this post-pandemic world that might be interesting is having that person, having that sales associate work with the consumer to really fully understand the wants and needs. And I mean, let's look at how Best Buy has been doing this with the home and theater, the Magnolia product, that they had their sales associates really strive to communicate with their consumers to make sure that they get exactly what they want. And I think in that sense, some of these pandemic, processes that have been implemented in these stores, allowing those sales associates to kind of really make sure that the product that is being put in the consumer's hands is exactly what they need. And so they have a higher, percentage of that product staying with that consumer instead of being potentially returned due to, I bought this, I thought it was going to work and it's not working. So I think that's one of those experiences that really kind of affected me, and that I was like, hey, that's fantastic. I think that's exactly what I need.
I think just to expand on that, the whole topic of customer experience and service is really important. There have been some quite good examples of in-store staff who've been giving one-to-one sessions with people on their phones, demonstrating products, talking them through the product benefits, and actually having a really good connection with customers even when they couldn't go to the store. So I think that kind of thing really helps, and it's a very good use from a retailer's perspective when stores are maybe not so busy, that they still have that one-to-one connection with customers when they're in their home. So I think things like that can really help.
Michelle, final word to you.
I'm going to throw out 2 off-the-wall ideas that I think a lot of folks have been impacted by, and experiences have been positive from what I'm hearing. One is telehealth. I think telehealth is an enormous growth category for everybody based on today's environment. And as the experience gets better, I think it will be more comfortable for a lot of folks, and a lot of the experience challenges are technology based. So I think that's one category. The other is, what was I going to say? Vaccination sites. I think vaccination sites are one where I have seen most people comment, man, that was really organized. And when I go to the vaccine sites and I see the signage that they're using and setting expectations for folks, wait times, scheduling, scheduling piece maybe needs a little bit of work here in the US, but or perhaps across the board. But once you do have it scheduled, I think it's a really seamless process. And if we can kind of learn from those, I think we're set up for success in the future. So.
Well, we are coming up on the hour, and so apologies we're kind of short for Q&A, but everyone's contact details are up on the slide right now. So I'd like to first thank you to the panelists, to Michelle, to Alex, to Ross for taking the time to chat and share your thoughts. Hope everyone found this to be a great dialogue, and there's a lot more I'm sure we could have covered, and maybe we need to do a part 2. And then
we
actually,
should
do a follow-up on this. This is actually a good series, I think. And then also a special thank you to Tony Green over at Snap Install, our sponsor, and helping us to pull this together. So appreciate his support, and everyone else, and to everyone too for signing up and being part of this hour. We all appreciate you taking the time. Any questions, do please feel free to reach out to everyone here. We are watching our emails. There's no 9 to 5 anymore. So although Ross is off at the end of the day, so give him a little bit of time to respond tomorrow. But again, thank you very much. And I think we'll be doing more of these in the future. So do stay tuned. And again, thank you to everyone. And to Tony, I'll let you say the final words to take us out.
Appreciate everyone's time today, and thanks for listening. Hope you guys learned something. I know I did. So again, like Brian mentioned, feel free to reach out to us and know that we're here to help and really bring this ecosystem together. So thanks again to all the panelists, and again, thank you again, Brian, for having us be a part of this today.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.